So thank you guys for joining us today. I know we really appreciate it. Your time is valuable. We're going to be talking about creating and showing more value when working with buyers. This is really relevant, right? It's always relevant, but it's more of a hot topic, I guess, right now with everything that's been going on with NAR Settlement, which will continue to change and update and I don't know, have new elements that arise. And depending on where you're at in the country, what MLS you're in, you might have different requirements. But what's clear is really showing value when we're working with our buyers, feeling comfortable bringing in those buyer representation agreements, even if we weren't one of the original 18 states that required them before, they will likely be requiring them this year. So we want to help you learn better techniques and dialogues to win more when you're on those appointments. There we go. With today's agenda, we're going to talk about how to stand out with competing, a 3-layer approach to showing your value, the process that sets you apart, your unique selling proposition, and we'll cover some dialogues and tips. I'm going to ask for, and so we'll got some interaction at different times, so feel comfortable unmuting, or if you type in the chat, that's cool too. We'll read your comments when we get to those slides. So how to stand out, we're talking about having a process, communicating like a champ, and knowing and showing your value. The biggest thing is you need to start thinking of a buyer representation agreement like your listing agreements, right? We got to win the client so that they choose you as the agent to represent them. You do that by being prepared, listening to their needs, and putting your best foot forward. I don't know, does anyone ever watch YouTubes? Anyone like YouTube? I enjoy it. I find some really great things on there. If you've never heard of the real estate lawyer, her name is Tiffany Weber. She's on YouTube. Pretty entertaining for those of us that are geeks about real estate. But so she had a YouTube called The 3 Common Pitfalls of Self-Represented Buyers. So this was actually prior to the NAR, well, I guess that's been going on for a while, but prior to like the settlement talk. She said, hey, I'm an attorney. I'm going to come on here and share what do I see when someone comes to me with a contract. They were a buyer and a seller without representation and said, finish it, right? And she goes over the 3 common pitfalls. I think these are valuable for us as agents to be aware of because it helps us discuss our value when we have a client considering doing that. And so typically every contract that gets brought in, whether it's written on a napkin or typed out, does have an address, a closing date, and a price. But that's not everything, right? And we know that's not everything. But those are the 3 common pitfalls, actually, are almost exactly those things. So they have an address. Well, that's not a legal description. As an agent, you've had this come up. Does the land that they see come with the house? Are they picturing that 8 acres is what they're getting, yet they're actually getting a ½ an acre with the house, and that just happens to be a field behind? It's a different lot or someone else's. So that's number 1 that comes up on most self-represented buyers is, do they even understand what they're receiving? Number 2 is price. Almost all the time, she said it's the tax value, right? And we all know tax value does not equal market value. Oftentimes that could be in a buyer's benefit, but it also could be at a buyer's disservice. Let's see what that falls as. What does that look like? And does a buyer get shocked, right? If it was low and they got the house for low, that their tax rate skyrockets the following year when the tax man catches up, right? And then number 3 was property use. And that's something, you know, you're buying this house. We've all sat down with a buyer. I want to short-term rent it, make it a VRBO, or I want to farm it, or I want to add an ADU, a second dwelling. And I just assume I can do that. If they haven't said that to you, you wouldn't know that's what they were doing with it. But once you know it as an agent, right, you're saying, okay, is this even available for this property? Am I making sure you're in the right spot? When you're self-represented, the buyer and seller typically aren't doing that. And it's not an easy thing to Google. It really isn't. It's something that you really need an expert to help you with to navigate it. So 3 common pitfalls of self-represented buyers. I really liked that YouTube.
Yeah, and it really starts the process really of what this class is about, which is you showing your value, right? I mean, if buyer is deciding to represent themselves, they're going to miss things that you bring value to the table on, right? So that's how we have to start looking at things, is where can we add the value to the process? So,
Nice. Thank you, Scott.
all right. Is everyone else seeing a little red squiggly line on the screen? Susan says yes. Michelle says no. Okay. I see it. I don't know how it got there, but it just showed up there. So it'll be fun. It'll be like the mystery red worm on the screen.
Someone's taking notes on the screen.
Yeah.
Scott,
But don't try to pick it off your screen. What, Lori?
I think it's my fault, Scott. I think I accidentally did that.
Oh, really? Oh, because
yeah, I was messing with my iPad.
Oh, that's funny. That is funny.
Sorry.
All right. Well, no worries. No worries. All right. Well, we have a 3-layer approach to showing your value, and I want to start with sharing with you guys where the idea of creating value, showing more value came from. So, Renee and I used to own a brokerage in the Seattle market, and about 7 years ago, we realized that agents were really struggling to really show their value, and it was affecting their commission amount. And so we created this class called Value Proposition Workshop about 7 years ago, and we've been teaching it ever since then for both representing sellers and buyers. And what we saw over time is the agents that started to take what we taught them and instill it within their business started to see some benefits in terms of their commit. They were able to protect their commission more, charge more, et cetera, because they fully understood their value, where before they didn't really understand what they brought to the table. So the 3-layer approach is going to be you, your office, and your brand. Now, mostly what we're going to talk today about, though, is going to be you. So we'll start with you and the things that you bring to the table. But before we get into it, I think it's very important. When I used to sell real estate, I used to think about WIFM. What's in it for me? From the standpoint of a buyer, you have to think about what is in it for them. In anything that I bring value to the table, why would that be important to a buyer? If I have a value piece that might be for a seller, why does it bring value to the seller? Okay. If it doesn't bring value to the seller, then it's not a value piece to them. So even though it might be something that we view as a value piece, if it's not in their perspective bringing value, then it's not going to help your cause. All right. I like this image here. We've used this in the past because you see 5 apples on the screen. Has anybody gone on a listing appointment and competed against 4 other agents? I know I have, right? We want to be the red apple. We want to be the one that stands out, the one that they pick, right? So how do you do that? In a sea where we all look similar, we sound similar, we probably, a lot of us charge similar commissions even. How do we stand out, right? We need to find ways to stand out. So we're going to show you that today. So what separates you from the competition? Let's talk first about you being an area expert. So I'm going to give you guys this is going to be quick. And I mean, we did this class in 4 hours, you guys. When we used to teach it, value proposition, 4 hours. We're giving you the 90-minute version today. So bear with us. We're going to be lickety split, be ready to take notes. But think about things like as simple as, were you born and raised in the area? Like Lori Edwards, I know she's in Raleigh, North Carolina. Was she born and raised there? Lori, were you born and raised there? No, she was not. I wasn't either. In my market, I was not either. And so that was not something I can use. But if you were born and raised in your market, that is huge. To me, that's a value proposition for you, right? Or maybe you lived in the area for X number of years, or you sell X number percentage of your business in a certain zip code. For me, in the Seattle market, in the north of Seattle market, the 98201 zip code, I was number 2 in that zip code. More than 30% of my business was in that one zip code. So that was a value prop anytime I work with buyers or sellers in that zip code. What about a niche? Do you have a niche, a focus point that you're good at? Have you worked with a lot of luxury clients, military veterans, seniors, condo experts? You guys get the point here. If you're working with, say, for example, I've worked with a lot of seniors and I'm getting ready to interview to potentially represent a buyer who happens to be a senior. That's going to be an important piece that I might want to bring up as a value piece, right? Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so, I've actually represented a large portion of my business has come in the senior community, right? That's kind of how you benefit from a value piece there. All right. What about the feedback that you've received from past clients? Now, for us, when we had the Comey team, we actually created testimonial pages that were specific for neighborhoods or areas. So, for example, we primarily worked in a county called Snohomish County, Washington. Okay, we had a North County, a Mid County, and a South County testimonial page, so that whenever we went on an appointment where we were competing for a buyer or a seller, we had testimonials specific to that area, so that those buyers and sellers can relate to that. That's what we mean by that. Go through your testimonials, pull those out from the different parts of the county that you live in and work in, and then create separate testimonial pages, and only bring the one on the appointment that's relevant to that buyer. Also, what if you have represented several condo purchasers in the past, right? You might have testimonials that are just from condo purchasers that you can create, or just from land, or just from single-story homes, or from a certain price point. So don't underestimate how many of these different testimonial pages you can create to really stand out and show a buyer that, look, I've worked with tons of condo buyers. In fact, this testimonial page, these are all past condo buyers that I've represented. That's the idea with that. That's how you stand out from your competitor. All right. Do you hold any designations or certifications? We're going to go into this quite a bit. Make sure that you're marketing yourself with the designation. Now, I know a lot of agents say, you know what, designations don't do anything for you, so why would I waste my time with it? I'm going to tell you 100% they can help you. Only if you market yourself as to the WIFM. What is in it for that client? Why is it important that you hold that designation for that client? So what I want to ask you guys is, do any of you have a designation? And if so, how do you sell yourself as having it? Who wants to share? This is the participation part.
I can.
All right, Michelle.
Hi. I'm a certified negotiation expert. I've had that one for a really long time, almost my whole career. And in every buyer's, actually, and seller's appointment, I bring it up. And I talk about how, it depends on the market, but I mean, any market really, but especially the last, 5, 6, 7, whatever years, how important negotiation is, and how many, I go on and on about it and talk about, there's a few basic points in a contract, but there's so many more. And I've counted them up to like 40 something little nuances within a contract that you can make yourself strong, but not necessarily giving the basics or money, which is typically the most, money, time, the few basic ones. But I also talk to them about how negotiation starts from the minute I show the home, talking to the agent, really selling myself and selling my client. It starts before we ever we may not even write an offer on that property, but it's going to start there just in case. So they perk up. I also share that less than, I think it's still 3 or 4% of agents across the country have that designation. And then they really get excited about that. And they're always dumbfounded by it. I am too. So it definitely works because people get pretty excited about that.
Nice. Yeah. Very good. Thank you for sharing that. That's the CNE is actually one of the designations I'm gonna mention here in a second. So thanks for having it. I'm glad it's working for you, and thanks for sharing how it helps you.
Yep.
All right. Anybody else?
In the chat, he has one, but it doesn't pertain to real estate. I'm kind of curious what that means, but it allows him to stand out.
Very good. Very good. Good job, Ryan.
Oh, are you trying to share, Ryan? Yeah.
Yeah, so I can share on it.
Yeah.
So my background, I actually have my MBA in consumer psychology and marketing and advanced marketing management. So although I might be newer into the industry 3 years in, what sets me apart is that who better to market your house than someone who knows the consumer down to a science.
Nice.
And a lot of people are like, oh, I didn't think about that, because there's not too many in the industry that do have some sort of a degree. Most people are second careers, not to devalue any of the other accreditations. I still do want those. It just is a matter of time.
Yeah. Very good,
I
Ryan.
think that's a really good point, right? Because you could take some of your past experience, your past accolades, and share how that is a transferable skill to the customer today, right?
All right. And Ryan, what market are you in? Just out of curiosity.
Reno, Nevada, Lake Tahoe,
Okay.
over here on Sam's team.
Very cool. Any referrals that way? There you go, Ryan. And Michelle is in Snohomish County. Washington. So if anybody has any referrals in Snohomish County, Washington, there you go. All right. Anybody else want to share about a designation? We'll take one more if somebody else wants to share. No one? All right, we'll move on. We'll move on. All right, so just a few that might be pertinent specifically with buyers. Obviously, the ABR, the Accredited Buyers Representative, is a great designation. Now, it used to be less people held this designation, but recently, NAR has made this available at no cost. So anybody that is a realtor has the ability to get this designation at no cost. Now, there is some prerequisite that you need to, or I'm saying the wrong thing, not a prerequisite.
Yeah, so there's electives, so you do have to have
Electives,
8 hours of other elective courses, right? But
Yep.
the NAR has made the ABR free through the end of this year, so free through December 31st, 2024. And if anyone has ever had the ABR, you know, some of these have dues. So like REBAC is the Real Estate Buyers Agent Council. So for the first year, there is no REBAC cost either. So for the full first year, there's no cost to get it, no cost to be a member. And then if you want to keep your membership in REBAC, which gives you a lot of tools like templates, things like that, it's $110 a year.
Yep. So again, thinking about the WIFM, why would it be important to a buyer that an agent has an ABR? What do you guys think? Versus an agent that doesn't have an ABR. What are your guys' thoughts? More knowledge, Donnelly says, yeah. Yeah. Anything else?
It shows that they care. Yeah, credibility, and that they care. If they're taking the time to better themselves with classes, then that means they're serious about themselves and their profession.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. And specific to buyers, right? Specific to that client that's in front of you. So
This particular designation does require you to have sold 3 homes as a buyer representative. So that's kind of cool too. Like it's actually one that shows that there's experience doing the job.
yeah. Perfect. Lori,
It gives you confidence as a buyer's agent. I took the ABR course a long time ago, and even as a couple years into the business, there were things that I was like, oh, okay. So it gave me a lot of confidence in terms of feeling like I knew what I was talking about.
awesome. That's good. That's a very good point. Yeah, a lot of these designations will. So very good. All right. In addition to the ABR, there's a CRS. Now, this is kind of a more advanced designation. If you can see here on my screen, only about 3% of all real estate professionals in the US hold this designation. That is a bullet point I would share on the appointment if I held that designation, because that's an important one. The CRS is probably considered, in my opinion, it's considered the most coveted of all designations. Now, that does have more stringent prerequisites, like you had to have sold X volume of homes and X number of homes. So it's a little bit more intensive. But if you don't have the CRS, that might be one that you put on your radar to potentially get.
For sure. And we do have someone who asked a question. If you have to be a realtor or a member of NAR to earn designations, for these 2 that we've shared, they are NAR designations, but there are designations available that do not require you to be a realtor. So it just depends on the designation, who accredited it.
Yeah, and there's lots of designations out there that are not realtor ones. Like, for example, Michelle mentioned the CNE. That is not a realtor one. And the MCNE is the Master Certified Negotiation Expert. But the Renee, the real estate, I call it the Renee because, you know, my wife's name is Renee. The Renee designation is the Real Estate Negotiation Expert. I think that having a negotiation designation of some sort is incredibly valuable to both representing buyers and sellers. Do you guys think there's a WIFM there for a buyer and a seller if you have taken a course and a designation on negotiating?
Absolutely.
Perfect. Does anybody
Michelle's
else
probably comfortable speaking to it, right? But like most of us get uncomfortable when we have to negotiate. That is a big part of why clients hire you to represent them, because they don't want to have to get into that nitty-gritty spot.
Yep. Yeah. And you guys, these courses, the CNE, which Michelle mentioned she has, the Renee, if you have these, like I actually have the Renee designation. the things they teach you in there, I mean, I sold real estate very successfully for many years, okay? Without that designation. I took that designation and earned it when I stopped selling real estate. I wish I would have taken it sooner, because the things they teach you in there about how to have conversations with agents that previously worked with a listing agent before you write your offer, reach out to the cooperating agent on the other end of a prior deal from that listing agent, is brilliant. I mean, there's just little nuances like that. So take one of the negotiation experts one, and the pricing strategist designation could work for both sellers and buyers. I have it on here because how many buyers agents actually say, I have a pricing strategist designation, and why that would benefit you, the WIFM for you, is that I can properly identify a great offer price based on comps, because I've taken this course that has helped me really analyze the previous closed sales and the current active sales, right? Any other comments on those before we move on? All right. And then it would be helpful too, if you have a lot of, like, for me, I had a lot of, I'm prior military, so I had a lot of military clients. So having something like the MilRes, the Military Residential Specialist designation, was huge for me. But maybe you get the SRES. You guys, any of these designations, only a small percentage of agents hold them. Or if you're in a resort area, resort and second home property specialist is a great one. This is going to help you stand out. Again, as the laws start to change a little bit, the rules start to change based on everything happening in our industry, it is going to be more, there's going to be more competition for buyers. And what I mean by that is buyers are going to start interviewing multiple agents potentially. We have to at least assume that might be a realistic thing, just like sellers interview multiple agents, right? So we have to stand out. We have to find ways to stand out. And having a designation can be one of those things.
Yeah, I really like your point too on designations. Don't just get one to have some letters. And that was kind of Ryan's point too, right? I mean, get a designation because it is going to help you with the client that you work with, or with the type of business that you want to have, or with the skill that you need to sharpen. So, don't feel like, oh my gosh, you just saw 10 designations thrown up here, you got to do all of those. No, if you don't have one, maybe pick one.
Yep.
Or this year, pick one that you want to work towards, and then think about how it's going to help your client, how you can market that.
Yep. All right, other ways that you can stand out. Well, you've got to know your numbers. I talk about this all the time in my elite training and in the one-to-one coaching. You have to know your numbers, and specifically one of the things that I followed greatly for myself when I used to sell was my list price to sold price percentage, both when I represented sellers, but also when I represented buyers. So when you represent buyers, I'll give you an example of what this looks like. Okay, let's say the list price to sold price ratio is 100%. What that means is a house is listed at $400,000, and on average, you're getting that house under contract at $400,000. Does that make sense? That's 100%. Now, when you represent a seller, you want the list price to sold price percentage to be higher than that, meaning on average, you're getting the seller more than what the average in your MLS is getting. So the average in the MLS, let's say, is getting 100%. Your percentage is 102. That's good. That's a value proposition to a seller, right? To a buyer, you want to be under the average for your market. So if the average is 100%, I'm at 98.6. On average, I'm getting homes 1.4% under the asking price, which is a benefit to a buyer. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yeah.
So this is going to be something you'll want to know. Now, your average sale price, it's just something that you want to know. We ask agents this all the time. They have a ballpark idea of what their average sale price is, but they're usually not exact. And so we want you to have the exact number, because it might benefit you if your average sale price, let's say, is $500,000, and you're getting ready to work with a buyer that's $500,000. That's perfect, right? That's another value piece that you can say, is that most of the buyers I work with are in this similar price point, right? And don't underestimate being a Realtor member. If you are, I know not everybody is, but if you are, that could be another place where you can stand out. All right. Any questions up to this point? All right, let's talk about community. This is a huge one. I think a lot of you, the one thing I love about realtors and real estate agents is they do a lot in the community usually. They give back. They're very giving people. And there's things that you likely do. You probably sit on a board, or you volunteer, or you donate. Lots of great ways that we contribute back to the communities that we serve. And that needs to be told to your clients. We used to have a page with all of the logos of all the different organizations that our team supported over the years. That's the kind of graphical thing that you want to put in like your buyer folders, right? Even your seller folders. The Comey team is big on giving back. And here's some of the organizations we support, right? So think about those as a way that you can separate yourself. On your screen here, I wanted to share a quick story. If you notice underneath the sign writer here, it says Miracle Home, Seattle Children's Hospital on the right-hand side of that. This particular agent donates part of her commission after every sale to Seattle Children's Hospital. And I kid you not, this is a real story. I was showing homes to a buyer of mine once, and literally it was one of the agents in my office who had this sign writer on here. And the buyer was torn between two houses. And what it came down to, they selected the one that was a miracle home because they had a personal story. They knew somebody that was treated at Seattle Children's Hospital, and they wanted to pick the home that was going to benefit Seattle Children's Hospital. So that's a very kind of extreme story, but those stories exist. Don't underestimate when you might connect with a buyer or a seller based on a nonprofit or an organization that you also support. Does that make sense? So we want to make sure that we're talking in our value about what we do personally, community-wise. Now, personal experience, I think this could be huge, right? Obviously, if you own a home and you're working with a first-time home buyer, you've been in their shoes before, right? That's something you want to share. If I'm working with an investor client who wants to buy a rental property, and I personally own several rental properties, which I do, that's something I want to bring up. Like, why would I hire you? Here's the thing. Think about a client asking you this question: why should I hire you over other qualified agents? You need to have a response to that. And one of mine in that example would be, well, I also own several rental properties. And so I know exactly what your mindset is. I know exactly what cap rates look like, and I can help you through this process, right? Or if you have a second home and you're working with a second home buyer, if you own a piece of land and you're working with a land buyer, all of those things can be relevant to your value for that buyer.
And it's kind of leading with your strengths, right? You may not. You might be helping someone with a second home and you don't own your first home yet. That's okay. That's not going to be something you're going to point out as your value proposition. But if you have it, point it out as your value proposition.
Yeah, you know what? On that note, real quick, during the Great Recession, I know Michelle Hemshaw was around during that time, so she'll relate to this. But during the Great Recession, there wasn't a lot of good news, right? I mean, home values were going down quick, inventory levels were extremely high. It was a horrible time to be a real estate agent, honestly. But as a brokerage owner during that time, I gleaned onto the one positive that was happening in the market. That's kind of how you have to look at this. Like Renee said, not all these things are going to pertain to you, but you've got to latch onto the things that do make you up and do create your value. And that's what you're going to share, right? All right, now we're going to switch gears. So we talked all about you and the value you bring. Now your office, do you guys believe that your office brings value? Are there things your office does, your brokerage does that brings value? All right, think about this. Maybe you don't do a lot in the community, but your office does. Okay, lean on your office and the community service that they do. Company awards. If it's like the best real estate, if it's been voted the best real estate office in the area, or it's won awards nationally for being highly ranked, or whatever the case might be, what that speaks to is there's the community either respects that company enough that they're voting for them as a respected company, or there's a lot of experience in that office that they're winning awards, right? So speak to that. Is there lots of experienced agents in the office? This could be a benefit because here's the thing. Here's the whiff for the buyer, right? Or here's what I'm thinking, is that if I get stuck and we come across a tricky situation on this transaction, if I don't have the answer to it, I've got hundreds of years of experience at my office of great agents that I can lean on, right? That's kind of how you look at that one as a value piece from your office. Is your office a team culture, right? If I happen to be sick or out of town and you need to go look at homes this weekend, or you're going to be in town only this weekend and I'm out of town this weekend, guess what? I've got great support people. The agents in my office are going to help me out, right? We're a team. What about great leadership? Again, going back to if we come up with a snag in a transaction or a potential legal, hopefully knock on wood, no legal issues. But if we do end up in a legal situation, guess what? I've got a very strong leader in my office. I've got somebody who is on the realtor board, or maybe on the MLS board, or who's been a broker owner for 2 decades or 3 decades. All of that stuff, in my opinion, is relevant, right, for your value. And then, do they have great tools and resources? Things that can leverage you, right? Like if my office has a transaction coordinator and I use that service, that's a value piece that I can lean on, that my office provides, to help free me up to spend more time with my clients, right? And not time on administrative tasks. Okay, any questions on that?
Well, I think especially too, like when you're new and you don't have awards yet, or you don't have the experience, then having an office that has some of that you can lean on before you've beefed up your own resume is really handy. Not that you can't add some of it when you're experienced, but.
Yeah, perfect. All right. Well, what about the value of your brand? So we talked about a 3-layer approach. The first and most important layer is you, right? You bring a lot of value to the table. Your brokerage is probably going to bring the next best value to the table. Now, if you're at a company that's like a boutique office, then your brand and your office are the same thing. So not to confuse anybody that's watching this and is like, but I'm at a boutique brokerage. What's the difference between brand and office? For you, it's the same thing. But if you're at a franchise company, say, for example, Keller Williams or Remax, Century 21, John L. Scott, whatever the case might be, likely that brand, the overarching brand, is also bringing something of value. So I'm going to ask you guys, okay? So I want somebody to unmute and share. Why should a seller or a buyer care about the brand that you're with? Who wants to answer that question? What do you guys think? Anybody have a brand that they feel like brings them value?
I mean,
I
reputation in the community that they serve, 75, 85 years. You can't do that well. You can't get that just with the opening a business. You have to have that many years, behind you of positive experiences, good agents, good leadership, yada, yada.
Absolutely. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Michelle. Elisa, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing pretty much. I think reputation. I think Remax has done a really good job over the years of, having a reputation that they have more experienced agents. So.
Yeah, and the thing is, yeah, that's a good point, Elisa. And the thing is every brand, and here's the thing, we're not going to have a debate on which brand is better, or, every brand, I believe, has value pieces they bring to the table. And it's our job to figure out what that is so that it becomes a talking point for us on an appointment. Does that make sense? Even when I had my little independent brokerage, the real estate bundle, which, I mean, gosh, that was years ago. But we had our little dialogue of how that added value to a client, right? So you just want to think about that. Anybody else have any that they want to share, anything different that their brand brings? All right, then we'll move
From
on.
a consumer perspective, especially a buyer, buyers like searching online. If your brand has a great website that makes it easy to search for houses or set up a search, I feel like that could be a big deal.
Yeah, very good point. Very good point. Yeah.
Scott, I think also I have something to add too.
Yeah.
That the recognition when people, they're not just moving from one side of town to another and know everybody. If it's international, if they've worked with this brand before, and I find that with our brand Remax, that we are, we're so well known. Some people just automatically assume, that it's a good brand, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So by the way, Donna Lee is in South Carolina. So if you have any referrals in the Grand Strand area, the beach side, the water side of South Carolina, Myrtle Beach specifically. Yeah, that's Donna Lee. Yeah, and Donna, so your office, I happen to know, because I know your brokerage very well, that your brokerage is #1 in market share as well, right? So going back to the brokerage, if your brokerage is #1 in market share, that's a value piece that you can talk to on an appointment, right? So perfect. All right. Well, thank you guys for sharing all of that. I have this quote from Albert Einstein, who says, if I had an hour to solve a problem and my life depended on it, I would use the first 55 minutes determining the proper questions to ask. And we underlined there in red minutes. Actually, Lori underlined in red.
That's what I was gonna say.
No, so the reason that I love this quote is because we have to have a process, right? We can't just wing our client interactions. We just can't wing the appointments. We have to invest time creating a good system, a good process, so that we can succeed and have future success, and so that our process is referable. Because if we're really good on appointments, if we're really good at showing our value, even if that client doesn't hire us today, it's referable. They're going to remember that experience, and they're going to refer us to people, which is what we want, right? We want referrals. So the best way to stand out, we talked about a lot of ways to talk about your value, but the best way to show your value is to actually physically demonstrate it. And so with that, I'm going to hand it back to Renee.
Yeah, and that red line keeps on giving it underlined value here. So it worked out really well. So this was from the NAR 2023 report. Now, whether you're a realtor or not, you can access the report. You can get the full report if you are a realtor, but they do a big survey, right? And give you a lot of great statistics. I thought this one was relevant today. So 71% of buyers interviewed only one real estate agent during their home search. So that's kind of crazy, as Scott mentioned. Likely that'll change, but we're in a time of opportunity, right? You have an opportunity to shore up your systems, to have a great, buyer meeting. You probably already have a great listing meeting, whether you call it a presentation, a CMA, a conversation, whatever you named it, right? You've done that for your seller side of your business. Have you done it for the buyer side of your business? So having your value and demonstrating it is so highly referable. So we got to get this process down now. Most agents don't have a formal buyer consult. Maybe you don't. That's okay. What we did yesterday doesn't have to be what we do today, doesn't have to be what we do tomorrow. Rather, they jump in the car, start showing homes, right? Has anyone ever done that? You get a call, you're out at the property. That's how you start. So how does that help you show value? How do you show your value? And my concept, my thought, and hopefully some of you guys already are doing this, but you really start with a strategy meeting or a buyer's consult. I like to call it a buyer's consult. When you want to stand out, you got to get in the habit of doing something differently than what others are doing. Does anyone currently have someone come into their office, do a buyer meeting prior to doing showings? A couple of you? It's huge, yeah. Right? You've heard the concept, like you've heard the jokes that people make, right? Buyers are liars or whatnot, right? Okay. Might be funny, but if you sit down and take the time to show someone respect in your system, they're going to either say, yes, I'm your person, we resonate, we connect, or they're going to say, I'm not ready for this, or I don't operate this way. And you're going to find that out early on before spending gas, hours, miles, time, right? So that's what we're hoping to do with this. Sometimes people go, gosh, but they won't come in. They won't come in for the meeting. So I have a little dialogue here to get to the buyer's consult. I want to give this thought or example. It's not mine. It's someone else's example. But have you ever bought a car? You go to the car lot. You don't start at the financing department, right? You start with the test drive and looking at all the pretty features. And the first thing they want to do is get you to sit down to feel the car, right? They want you to get in a car. You've probably all felt that. They don't start with, well, let's make sure you get pre-approved for this car. That's, I think, a mistake a lot of agents make is we start there. Well, before we talk, get your pre-approval letter, then come back to me. And I think that turns people off really fast. Yes, we want clients pre-approved. I'm not saying that part before we're out showing homes. But I think we got to build the rapport and show our value before we go straight there, because we might kind of get them off of the excitement. And does anyone know a lender that works with an agent other than them? You are not the only agent they work with. I mean, pretty much anyone who makes a decent living looks with more than one agent, unless you're doing that much business, right? So there's also a chance that if you tell them to go get pre-approved, they're going to get referred to someone else before you even have the chance to meet with them. So we also don't want to do that. So we want to start with what they're excited about. We want to start with the with them, what's important for that buyer. And it's letting them know, I'm excited. I'm excited to have the opportunity to help you find your home. We want to share that express that excitement. Let's schedule our buyer's consult so we can discuss your goals and dreams, mutual expectations, and then get out and view properties. Does tomorrow at 3 or Friday at 2 work better for you? Right? And schedule that appointment. Now, sometimes we get that pushback. I'm sure you guys have all had it. Well, I'm not ready to work with an agent yet, or I just want to see this home, right? Whatever that pushback looks like. It's important to acknowledge what they said. Hey, I understand. Many of my clients have felt the same way when they first start the process and they start driving around or scrolling and looking at homes online. And then they realize it's not efficient, or they get really frustrated when they get all those spam emails and calls from the online sites. Because, you know, everywhere when you go click so many times makes you put in your email or your phone number. So if you would be open to coming to the office, sitting down for 30 minutes, I can share with you my strategic process that will benefit you when you're ready. It doesn't obligate you to work with me, but it allows you and I to get to know one another. So when you are ready, we can jump right into the fun part, looking at homes. That's what they want. They want to know that they don't have to go through red tape or a whole bunch of boring meetings, right? That they can go out and look at homes. So then we get in the buyer consult and we have to review what our process looks like. It also has to match what our process also looks like. So don't say you're going to do something that you're not going to do, right? But when we have that buyer consult, they come in the office, hopefully you have some kind of intake form. Does someone have some piece of paper with blanks on it and spots to write down information? Hopefully. But it's contact information, right? How do they prefer to be contacted? Is it call? Is it text? Is it email? Now, how many times do we work with just one person? There might be 2 people. They could have different preferred methods of contact. Get both of those, right? You know, Donna wants to be texted. Her husband wants to be called. That's fine. We want to find out the desired location they're looking to move to, the details about their desired property. We want to figure out their timeline. You know, is a school year important? Is there a certain date? Do they need to sell a home first? And I will say, if you or your company doesn't have an intake form and you're looking for a new take, actually, we will be sending one out next week. So anyone that is registered, if you signed in on yourself, if you're watching with someone, just drop your email in the chat and we'll make sure you get a copy of that intake form. Also in the buyer consult, we got to go over expectations, right? We need to find out, what do they expect out of the agent they choose to work with? It's a good habit to get in now. They might only be interviewing you right now, but in the future, maybe they're interviewing more people. If you're asking what they expect, that can be big. You got to share your expectations of them. Maybe, you know, you have expectations that they will communicate when they're running late for a showing, right? Whatever that looks like, right? You're going to share your expectations of them. And then you got to talk through any gaps to ensure it's a good fit for both parties. If you always take Sunday off and that's the only time they're available to look at homes, that's their only day off, you might find out right there that you're not going to be the best fit for them. And is there an agent in your office that does work on Sundays? Maybe you refer them to that agent. We got rid of that problem day one in one quick meeting.
Yeah, one of the best things I've ever heard in my real estate career, actually works in life in general, is that conflict only arises when the expectations differ, right? So what we're trying to accomplish is getting on the same page with expectations, right? That way there is no future conflict. So
great point. Yeah, we want to hopefully find as many of those little quirks out in the beginning, because then everyone has a better experience, right? For property search, and again, this is us talking about what our property search looks like. So you have to think about who you are. Are you a passive agent? Do you just set them up on an MLS auto drip campaign? They'll get emailed when something matches. Or do you have them send you when they see a home they're interested in? Because, you know, homes are all online now. Or are you more active? When you do send off that email with a home that met their search in the MLS drip campaign, do you also call and text when it's a great one? Like, this one's going to go fast. Let me know if I can get you into it tonight. Check that one out. Call attention to it. Are you being aware of for sale by owners? I mean, even on Zillow.com, you can look at for sale by owners in your area. Do you ever look at that to just be aware of what inventory might be there? Are you willing to send out a buyer letter or door knock as needed? And the buyer letter being, you know, maybe Susan has a client who's just wants this one neighborhood. She could send out a letter to the whole neighborhood. You can get an address list pretty easy and say, I have a client you're potentially interested in your home. If you've thought about selling, we'd love to set up a tour, have a conversation. But it's taking those extra steps that make you different if you choose to do that. For property showings, same thing. Do you just open the door? Who has Redfin in their market? Okay. So that was like the king of opening doors. And if you work for Redfin, that's okay. I mean, it's just different concepts, right? But there is an app and you can say, set up an appointment to see it, right? Like schedule a showing, I think is what it says. And it's not the listing agent. It's not someone who's met that buyer before. A lot of times it is someone just opening the door. Maybe you get a great person and they're interacting more. But are you just showing up to open a door? Or are you being more active? Are you asking questions during the showing? What do you think of the garage? This is a 2-car garage. In our initial meeting, you said you had to have 3. Will this garage work for you? Asking those types of questions. Do you know about finishes so you can point out differences? Right? Okay, this is vinyl siding. This one was hardy plank. What's the difference in value and maintenance? Can you spot basic maintenance issues? And we're not saying you need to be an inspector by any way, shape, or form, but you should know, does that look like it's a brand new roof or does that look like that roof needs to be replaced, right? There's some basics that we can work with and you can have your inspector educate you. There's actually, I know, continuing education classes that teach some of these things. What were you going to add, Scott?
I was just going to say in our one-to-one coaching, you know, we've been doing one-to-one coaching with agents for years. And we track in our one-to-one coaching, we track any active buyers that our clients are working with. And sometimes those active buyers are active for multiple months. And so when we get down to the nitty-gritty, a lot of times what we find is they're not asking all these questions. They're just opening up doors. So we then coach them on kind of asking the appropriate questions to eventually get them a little bit more excited about a property so that they eventually bring pen to paper for the right property for them. But it does start with asking all these questions and asking even just the main question, which is, can you see yourself living here, right?
Has anyone ever experienced that? You just have a buyer who keeps looking, but doesn't write an offer? Any questions or tips that you have to getting unstuck? We've all been stuck. So I think these are just ways that you help them evaluate. And I'll give you a tip on an unstuck moment here. But did want to share, just since you mentioned that, Scott, on the NAR report too, for 2023, buyers typically searched for 10 weeks and looked at 7 homes. So that's really valuable for you to know. If you have a buyer that's been looking for way longer than that or looked at way more homes than that, is that time to have a heart-to-heart and to say, okay, did something change? Am I missing the mark? Because we just keep looking.
Renee, oh, go ahead, Donna.
I was just going to say that when you take notes too and you ask questions, it also helps to give the feedback to your listing person.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know on everybody else's market, but I am just I have to follow up with some people to get feedback. But when I have a client, I take a lot of notes and I try to give them some substantial feedback as to why this did not fit with my client. You know, it may just be that my client isn't ready to buy yet, which they didn't tell me, or which because I didn't ask them. But yeah.
What were you going to add, Lori?
There's a book called Exactly What to Say for Real Estate Agents. It's a little black book, super easy to read, not very many words on a page, which is always fabulous. But that's a great book to give you those questions to ask and ways to phrase your questions so that you can solicit like you're saying, if you're stuck with a buyer, it would give you some really good phrases to use to get unstuck.
Exactly what to say for real estate agents.
Yeah, and it's a take on another book that's some realtors modified and made it. It's a super easy book. You can almost read it like a daily devotional for real estate agents.
There you go. And Elisa, I know you had been unmuted, you remuted. Did you have anything you wanted to share?
No, I was actually just going to tell Donna Lee that that's a big frustration of mine too. I feel like feedback has gotten even worse. Maybe, I don't know. I just feel like we don't get very constructive feedback on a lot of our.
And you're getting garbled a little bit there at the end, Elisa, but so yeah, feedback has definitely dropped off. And so what you need to be thinking about as an agent listening to this is that means there are agents who aren't seeking that feedback from their client, aren't being professional at communicating, and that's how you can differentiate your value, right? If you can demonstrate that you're a great communicator, if you can demonstrate that you are listening for their needs, right? So here's a property showing tip, especially when you do get the opportunity to view multiple properties in a day, which depending on your inventory scenario, I know sometimes this happens, sometimes this doesn't these days. But I mean, just a basic, printing client copies of the property as well as your agent copies, right? So the client has something they get to hold on to, encouraging them to take notes. But after each showing, ask if this home is a home they want to consider. If they say, no, it's not a home for me, do that in front of them. It's really powerful. This one's gone. We're not thinking about it anymore. Trash, right? If it is a home that they want to consider, perfect. We're leaving it in the stack. What are the things they liked? Jot down those couple notes. What are the things they didn't? Jot down those couple notes. Look at the next home. If this home is one they want to consider, number 2, how does it stack up to number 1? Is this now number 1? And that's number 2? Where are we at? Help them rank as they go, because then you're helping them make a selection. You're helping them be very active in the process. And it's not just, hey, we're out for a fun day to look at houses. It's which home could I see myself buying?
Yeah, these buyers, there's a lot of buyers that feel like, but there might be some new homes that come on the market today that I'll want to see tomorrow. So thanks for showing me all these homes, but we're going to wait and see what comes on tomorrow. So that's why having a process separates you, because you're going to be able to bring this person to a decision earlier, and they're going to miss out on a great home that you know is perfect for them if we don't ask more questions. So we just have to be a little bit more proactive.
Okay. We're still in the consult. We're telling them what we do. How do we negotiate offers? Michelle probably has a great spot on this because of her negotiation designation. But even if you don't choose to get a designation, are you communicating that you have a system that's going to win offers? When you're with your client, are you discussing earnest money or due diligence money or whatever it's called in your market? Do they already have in mind how much that will typically be? Do they have a checkbook? Not everyone has a checkbook these days. Are there other options, right? Are you asking them, when you do purchase a home, what name do you want to take title in? These sound like really tiny things so far, right? But when you go and you sit down and you write an offer for the first time, and then you have to do 12 counters to clean it up, someone else can write an offer while you're dealing with the paperwork, right? Were you going to add something, Michelle?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I've done buyer consultations my whole career. I was lucky and taught very, very young, meaning in the career, not my age, about buyer consultations. But one thing that's helpful is if you don't have, like, I know you guys are going to do an intake sheet, which I'm looking forward to. I have a little one that I have, like, contact information. How do we want to communicate? Blah, blah, blah. I also talk that out. But the title companies oftentimes have buyer guide books, a first-time home buyer or just buyer guidebooks. And I use those still to this day, every single time. It's almost like a helpful guide that keeps me on track because I'm a talker and I'm just like, blah, blah, blah. These poor appointments can go, I watch body language, but they can go 3 hours if they'll let me go because there's so much to teach. But I think I call it buyer appointments as very educational. It's my opportunity to educate them because I think people can make decisions when they know what they're doing and when they feel confident. I mean, I go down to, do you know the word escrow? Have you heard the word earnest money? Have you heard the word appraisal? You know, a lot of people know those words, but they don't necessarily know what they mean. I said, let's keep talking about them, and don't feel silly if you don't, because you're buying a house and you may never have, or even if you did, maybe nobody ever taught you. I had a guy once that said, I've owned 15 houses in Florida, like 3 in Texas, 7 here in Washington, and no one has ever explained any of this to me. And it made me feel good. Yeah. And I was like, you just don't know. So I always say, look, I'm going to start off on kindergarten level and you stop me if it's too kindergarten-y. That's how I like to learn. So you let me know. And then I just go through literally like the 10 steps to buy a home. And it's kind of very routine for me now. I probably don't even need the book, but they do. It's nice to refer to, and it does keep me on track.
Yeah, keep that flow chart going.
Yeah.
So also with your client, I'm sure somewhere in that step, you're talking about financing. We didn't have it before we met them, right? But we're talking about
Huge.
financing after we're meeting with them. Are they using cash? Are they using a lender? Do they need referrals to a lender? Can you get their lender's contact information? Can they provide proof of funds, or is it in a cash jar buried in the backyard? Then we need to wait a couple months to deposit it and let it season. Yeah.
I mean, yeah. I mean, down to like, what cash do you need to actually write the offer? You know, if you're going to have an inspection, and some lenders make you pay for appraisal up front and those types of things, they feel very just much better knowing all of those pieces. There's no surprises. But one thing I'll add that has helped me throughout my whole career, and I've been lazy the last couple of years, I'm going to admit it, life events, you know, whatever in life, but that is the best place I have ever found to ask for referrals. And I try to hit it at minimum 2 times. So I usually start the conversation with, you know, they're usually a referral. So I'll start like, doesn't it feel so much more comfortable that you were referred? Because you feel like, you know, you're not just with a complete stranger, and it helps a lot. And then I talk about how that's how I do the majority of my business, and how much easier it is for both parties to feel like, number one, I'm not having to spend so much time trying to gain your trust, though I will. Sorry, my dog. But they don't have to feel so uncomfortable. And then I remind them again, I'm going to go on mute. Sorry.
Well, thank you, Michelle. So, right, we have our things that we're going with our client. You might add more in here when you're talking about negotiating offers, like she mentioned, appraisal cost, inspection cost, right? We're just trying to do a high level overview right now. But then also, what's your system around your pre-offer communication with the listing agent? And this one, I feel like we forget sometimes in the haste to write an offer, but are you at least calling that agent? Are there any offers, or have there been any offers, right? Is there a closing date that the seller prefers? Is there anything the seller's looking to see in an offer? That doesn't mean you're giving the seller everything, but that's valuable information for your buyer to be aware of, so they can write and put their best foot forward. Is there anything else that you'd ask the listing agent to help win offers? Do you guys all have a good process about reaching out to the listing agent? Awesome.
I think that's key in the beginning. I really do. I think it's so important to have that relationship, agent to agent. It just, that communication. I mean, if we get the deal, we got to work together to the end, right?
Exactly. And we're both going to be representing.
You can set the gauge how that's going to go, right? From that first conversation, usually. And I'm pretty lucky. I know a lot of agents, so I kind of have that, you know what I mean? Like that has helped win deals, like it has.
Yeah, it could help or it could hurt, right? If your reputation is that you aren't good to communicate with, that could be hurting your clients in the future, right?
100%. Yep.
You know what? And to that point, Susan, thanks for sharing that, because obviously being a broker owner, we've dealt with thousands of contracts over the years. And we've heard and seen it ourselves firsthand that there are agents that will just send offers on a property without even texting, calling, email. Well, they'll email the offer, but that's it, right? They won't even call ahead of time. You won't even know it's coming.
But they might spell the email address wrong.
What's that?
But they might spell the email address wrong.
And they might, yeah. So that's a good piece. If your communication with the listing agent is better than that, communicating that there are agents out there that do that separates you from those other agents, right?
For sure. It's another way to demonstrate your value. And then buyer consult, you're talking about it. What do you do pre-closing? So we did all the showings, we got under contract, and then there's this gap of time, right? So what can that client expect from you? What are your systems from contract to close? How often are you going to contact the client? I'll give you a weekly update, even if it's a no update update. Nothing new to report. Just wanted to let you know everything's going smooth. How often do you contact the lender? Right? And that could be, you know, did the appraisal come in? Do we have any information? What are we waiting on next? Maybe the lender needs you to nudge the client, right? They aren't getting me this document. They aren't getting me the blank page 2. Everyone knows about the blank page 2 of every bank statement, right? How often do you contact escrow or attorney or whoever the parties are? How do you communicate your contract deadlines and timelines? I mean, maybe your value proposition. I saw an agent who does a really nice calendar. Every time they go under contract, then they actually do in Microsoft Word a calendar. They put in the dates and they mark all the timelines and say, put this on your fridge, buyer. Thought that was pretty nice. That's a specific value proposition to them. Maybe you're more techie and you send them calendar invites, right? I don't know, but those are things that you can show your value. What do you do to help communicate these things?
And a copy of that calendar could be in your buyer folder, which if you don't have a
Example.
buyer folder, you should, in my opinion, you should at least consider it and put all of these things we're talking about in there. So this calendar can be in there so you can physically show somebody, here's a previous client that I've worked with, just to give you an example of the calendar that you'll get once we get under contract, right?
Another fun interaction part. What are your systems? What are the reasons you touch base after showings and inspections have ended? Appraisal, even if it's at value. Title report. Does everyone view a title report? Maybe settlement statement. I got your settlement statement today and reviewed it, or let me know when you get it if you're in an area where it only goes to your client, if you'd like assistance in reviewing it. Maybe you created a utility list. Here's the power company and the cable companies in the area. By the way, that's something that you could make once or twice. Maybe it's a couple different companies depending on the address, and then you just can use over and over again, right? FYI, I reached out to Lori, the listing agent today, just to coordinate keys and getting any codes you might need, like the garage door code, right?
Yeah, you know, HOA documents. You know, here's the thing. I see agents that they'll get the HOA document sent to them. They'll send it to the buyer to review, and they won't review it themselves. Like, that's just a mistake in my opinion, right? So if you do that, if that's part of your process, share that with the buyer. You know, there's a lot of agents that'll just send you the HOA documents when they get them. I'm going to actually review them as well. You know, I'm not an expert on everybody's HOAs, but I may catch something that you don't, right? It's just a second set of eyes.
And again, we're looking at how are we showing value to our buyer during that consult to where they want to hire us, right? If it's you going for a listing, you probably have on there that you enter the listing to the MLS and you go, well, duh, doesn't everyone do it? But you point it out. So you say it gets syndicated to 33,000 agents in my MLS, or, you know, exposed to 33,000 agents, and that might seem like a duh, but that's the kind of thing we're having to put together for our buyers if we're interviewing to be the agent chosen, right? We have to make sure they know all the little things we do. And then Michelle kind of beat me to the punch a little bit, but I also talk about post-closing. And I'm not a transactional agent. This is a great spot to ask for referrals. By the way, when you hire me, I'm going to be available for vendor referrals. You want to put in new floors in 3 years? Give me a call. I'm available to answer questions, not just for you, but for your friends, family, and coworkers, right? I send out a regular newsletter. Only say this if you do it. I host an annual client appreciation party, right? What are the things that they are getting that differentiate you?
Yeah, there's lots of agents that are transactional agents, right? They cash their commission check and they're on to the next one, and that's not me, right? My future business depends on doing an exceptional job for you, and I'm going to show it and prove it to you through my actions on this transaction, right? That's the kind of language that will win over another agent.
So you feel confident in introducing me to other people you know that want the same level of service. I like the word introducing. I know some people, you could use the word referral, but I think introducing makes sense a lot to a client compared to referral. Sometimes people don't know what referral necessarily means. But everyone picks their word they like. And then buyer consult, buyer agency agreement. Now, once you've gone over the process, you've shown all the value, this is when you introduce the buyer agency agreement. And it should be very easy at this point, right? If you've done all your showing of value, demonstrating a value, then it's as easy as, hopefully you see the value I will bring with you as your agent. In order for me to work with you as your agent, we need to formalize it with this agreement. Pull out the agreement, sign, right? So with that, I feel like as I'm talking to agents, especially in areas that haven't had to do buyer's agency agreements, they're getting really like, oh, I mean, I'm required by law. You have to do this now. And they're feeling like apologetic in their delivery. So you need to practice it. It shouldn't be apologetic. Hey, we've seen the value. Now it's time for the agreement. And it should feel really comfortable. But that comfortability comes with practice. Is anyone from a state that's always had a buyer's representation agreement or agency agreement? Any other tips you have for someone who hasn't as far as introducing the agreement?
Well, one of the things that we're going to do here in North Carolina is we are going, the way North Carolina law has been written is that actually at the time of first substantial contact, we did not have to enter into a buyer agency agreement. However, the NAR agreement says we do now. So we've got to change our way a little bit. But what we're going to explore is writing our own buyer agent agreement for that interim period of time. That's a little softer and kinder to get the process rolling instead of getting into a 6-page contract that our state has for people to use.
Got it. That's interesting. But yeah, so part of it, right, is just getting used to the process of, like you said, John, if you didn't have to sign it till you were writing an offer, now you're going to bring it into the consult. This is the appropriate time. We're sitting down, we're talking, will you sign? We do that with listings, right?
I will say,
have someone sign a listing before we start marketing.
Yeah, I will say over half of our agents did get buyer agent, the full agreement signed within the first appointment or second appointment. Nice. But I've got others that always waited. So I'm trying to kind of find that happy medium, what we'll do here.
Get everyone on the same page. And there probably will be some pushback, right? And so, I mean, you'll know your laws and rules. You'll know how the settlement pushes down the rules and whatnot as we get more updates over the coming weeks and months. But here's a dialogue for that pushback. You know, there are agents that may show you homes prior to signing an agreement. In doing that, they're showing you the lack of value in systems they'll provide you during the process. I'm a professional and have a strategic process that when followed gets the results my clients desire. Was there anything in our meeting today that gave you reason to not feel I will be adequate for the job? And you might change this to your own words. Dialogues are meant to do that. But I think the key part is that last sentence. Is there anything in our meeting today that gave you hesitation that I might not be able to complete the job for you? That could be another way to say it, right? You can change your words. You find what's you and authentically you. But it's okay. You can bring that up. Some people just push back because they have to push back, right? Commission pushback. Buyers agency agreements talk about money, right? That's a part that even when we are talking about it in listings, a lot of agents get really uncomfortable discussing that. So what if a buyer asks you, hey, reduce your commission? How do you respond? And the biggest tool belt dialogue, I'd say, if you don't already have in your back pocket to put in there is, can I ask what prompted you to ask this? A lot of times just asking that question ends the whole conversation.
Yeah, sometimes they Googled, you know, what do I ask my agent that I'm getting ready to interview to represent me on a transaction? And this might be one of the things, ask them to reduce their commission. So this happened to me one time where I asked this question, can I ask you what prompted you to ask this question? And they said, you know what, never mind. I actually was on Zillow and I was reading a blog that said I should ask an agent to discount, but never mind, we can move on. And literally just pushing back that little bit was enough for them to say, never mind, I'll pay your fee. So that's why this is a great first question.
And it's not insulting. I mean, listen to their answer, but in general, people will talk themselves out of the question just with a little, it's uncomfortable for them too, right? So you're just going to ask, seek clarification. Maybe there was something that you didn't say you would do that you actually already do. It's kind of a give me, and they value that. Right? They say, oh, well, if you're not going to, I don't know, do a market analysis every time we write an offer, I just think you're worth less. Oh, well, I do offer a market analysis every time we write an offer. Oh, okay. Couple other dialogues. We've all had this one on the listing side. I think we're going to start seeing it more on the buyer side at some point, right? But that they want to talk commission or set commission before they even have met you, right? On the phone call. Hey, John, I'll come meet with you. How much do you charge though? I want to know how much you charge. Well, we're taught to ask that question, right? So I appreciate your directness. I don't want to waste any of my time either, but I do think without taking some time to understand what you are looking for and what I'm offering, I'm doing a disservice to you. Can we set aside 15 to 30 minutes to sit down and have a conversation? If they don't want to meet with you, maybe they aren't your person. Maybe they're a transactional buyer and you're not a transactional agent. And that's okay. I haven't ever met anyone that won 100% of the listings. Otherwise, there'd only be one listing agent in the whole world, right? We aren't going to win 100% of our buyers. So sometimes it's nice to find that out early if it's not our person. But hopefully the right person goes, okay, yeah, let's meet.
Yeah, I wanted to share real quick, Renee. So my very first brokerage, when I started a brokerage, it was called Real Estate Bundle. We had 4 different commission rates that we charged as a company. Okay.
Hence the bundle.
Hence the bundle. And depending, so the cheapest commission amount got the minimal amount of value, right? The most expensive got the most value. So there's all these different levels. And if you're showing your value, you're going up in that ladder, even in the buyer's mind. Like they understand that they're going to get what they pay for. Right now, is there going to be the one-offs that will always just going to go with the cheapest agent? Yes, that will happen, but it's going to be rare. I promise you, it'll be rare.
Yeah. Here's another objection for you. This one's a really common one, right? The client says, okay, but this other agent charges X. Will you do it for X? Right? Asking for a commission, lower commission or a different commission. I can appreciate that. And you, I'll say it better. I can appreciate that. And you feel this agent will represent you in the same way I've outlined today. Be active versus passive, have a system to win offers, have systems around communication with all parties to a transaction, will be available to you throughout the transaction and after. I'm confident that what I offer is worth what I charge. Lucky for you, when you choose to hire me to represent you, I will fight for your value and benefit just as much as I fight for mine. See the one in the parentheses there? Some people like that. I'm confident that what I offer is worth what I charge. At least that other agent knows what they're worth. That's a little snarky to me. I don't usually add that one, but you might.
One thing that I learned again early on for listing appointments, which I can see this probably will transpire to buyers, was sometimes, and I don't get pushed on this very much, but sometimes, when you do, you can, so for example, in a listing, you can talk about each thing that you're going to provide, like whether, and this is the same with buyers. So whether that be a negotiation, communication throughout the transaction, being there, understanding contract, all the things, transaction coordinator, you can put them each like in a category, make sure there's 4 categories. So that's, you can create that, right? And then talk about how each category is worth 1%. And I'm giving you 4%, I'm only charging 3. So another thing on listings was if they were ever to ask to, decrease the commission. Some people can use this, some people don't use it very well, but you talk about that, like each thing is a percent, or, a percent goes off to the IRS, a percent goes off to my company, and a percent goes in my pocket. So if I gave up a percent, I'm a nonprofit. I'm literally not making any money. It doesn't mathematically quite equate, but that usually stops people immediately. And they're like, oh, and so they just move on. And so I'm thinking this probably in some which way, however I'm saying this, will transpire into a conversation with buyers to say, how does that work for me, as an agent? Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, outside of listings, instead of the 1% marketing, right? It's 1% is, gas and drive time or something, right? So you just have to alternate it. But it is a lot of the things you've already had for your listing objections are going to be your buyer objections and your conversations and things that make sense. I like your thought there though on the categories, because then it's almost like you're discounting already. If you're saying I'm giving you 4% of value for 3%, that's interesting. Also, you know, a good tip, and a lot of you guys have used this on the listing side, is when you're negotiating, negotiate dollars versus percentages. Dollars sound a heck of a lot better than percentages. $500 and 1%. 1% sounds so tiny. Depending on your market, that could be well over $500, right? This is just one last little take. So you don't have a buyer right now, and we said the best way to show value is to demonstrate it. Well, how do you show value when you don't have a buyer? And it's that thought that facts tell, stories sell. You've heard this. Get on video, share your process. It could look like, you know, hey, I get asked, what does it look like when I work with a buyer? Well, I start with a consult where I go over bing, 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 right? Little high level video. It could be a story from a past buyer that you worked with or a current buyer you're working with. But if you don't currently have a buyer to demonstrate this to and then ask for that referral or introduction, you got to show it to your sphere so they know how you work. If this is new for you, even share that. Be like, hey, I've updated my process. I have a really formal, or I have a better way to help people get the home they desire. FYI, if you mess around with this and like pull together a buyer consult that you hadn't before, call your sphere and say, can I practice on you? Someone's going to let you practice on them. And in that, you're going to say, is there anyone that you think would appreciate this type of meeting? And then they're going to give you a strong referral because they just sat through a buyer consult and learned what it's like to work with you. So use this opportunity. It really is an opportunity right now. Whenever we are forced by external measures to take change, we can control our internal. We can control how we take it. So use this to your benefit.
Yeah, and the best engagement that we've seen on video is a day in the life of videos.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're getting ready to go show homes, do that video, you know. Hey, getting ready to go show homes. Here's what it looks like. We're gonna go look at 4 homes today. I usually start at this time. We go to the first house, and we do this. Or you're on a home inspection. Hey guys, I'm at a home inspection for a buyer. I'm so excited for these buyers. I'm going to ask the home inspector who's right here, what do you look for in a home inspection? You know, so those videos are huge, and it demonstrates your knowledge of your job and your value.
Yeah. Well, and if you're not comfortable with video and your home inspector is, how easy is that? Make them the center of the story, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Perfect. All right. Well, I wanted to also share with you guys a couple of USP examples. So this is a unique selling proposition, and we all have to have it, right? We all have to have a USP. Think about it. Think about your value as almost being like your elevator speech. They say, like, if you're riding an elevator and somebody says, hey, how's it going? What do you do for a living? That you've got a quick response that shows a little bit of value of what you do. That's what a USP should show somebody, is the value that they provide. So I'm going to give you 2 examples today. If we haven't shown enough today of why you deserve the commission that you want to charge, and you're free to charge whatever you want to charge. But whatever you charge, you've got to show the value for it. So Hallmark, you know, for years, Hallmark did commercials where they said, when you care enough to send the very best, send Hallmark, right? And so I remember, and I've told this story before, so forgive me if you've already heard this, but a few years ago, I really had an important person in my life, other than Renee, that I wanted to get a greeting card for. And I wanted this person to know how much I cared about the circumstances they were going through. And so the very first thing that landed on my mind was Hallmark. I need to go to Hallmark because I care so much and I want to send the very best, right? Literally off of their tagline. Now, could I have gone to some place and got a 99-cent greeting card and still communicated a similar message in that? Possibly. But in my mind, I felt like I needed to pay the $8.99 or whatever I paid for the Hallmark card, which was a lot more, because to me, sending that meant more. Does that make sense? So it's still a paper card that's being mailed, but the value that I saw on Hallmark was worth it to me. You guys see the difference there? So Tom's Shoes, are you guys familiar with this brand? So I love Tom's Shoes. I'm actually wearing a pair right now. Not the pair on your screen. I think those are ladies' shoes. I think. But I love Tom's Shoes because they give a pair of shoes for every pair of shoes that they sell. They donate a pair of shoes to a child in need. Okay. Obviously, you can't do that by charging $9.99 for a pair of shoes. So I pay a little bit extra that I can for a similar looking pair of shoes so that I can back their cause, right? Their reasoning. So to answer the question that some of you might have in your mind is a buyer or a listing or a seller, are they willing to really pay more in commission for value? And the answer is yes. Most buyers and sellers, if you show the value, they will pay more, right? But it's up to us to show what that value is. So maybe you buy a pair of shoes yourself and donate it for every home you sell. I don't know. So you ask yourself, what is your USP? And there's a few things when you Google USP, there's a few things that are important to identify. The first is, who's your ideal client? Now, we're very big proponents of coming up with core ideology for your business, meaning having a mission statement for you and your business, having a vision statement for you and your business, and having some core values for your business. And in the vision statement, you identify who your ideal client is. And you might say something like, it's loyal buyers and sellers. You know, it's people that are going to refer me business in the future. That's my ideal client, right? Advocates. I want to make advocates out of people. So you identify your ideal client. What's the problem that you're going to solve for them? Now, a lot of the value pieces that we already talked about, you're solving some problems for them. You're helping them pick the right home or sell the right home, right? And then what are your most distinctive benefits? What are you offering? What, you know, if I'm going to charge X percentage, what am I delivering for that commission amount, right?
And by the way, with this one, if you're struggling to figure out what that is, ask some of your past clients, what were their favorite things about working with you? What do they say when they're talking to someone else and telling them they need to use Michelle Hamshaw? What are they sharing about your process? Because that's probably your most distinctive benefits.
Yep, that's a good point. And then define your promise. You know, that's what a USP does. You know, Tom's says, if you buy a pair of our shoes, we promise to deliver a pair to a child that needs them, right? FedEx, you know, we've used FedEx in the past. FedEx says if it absolutely positively has to be there on time, use FedEx, right? Even though there's some jokes out there that say, you know, if you want to ever see the package arrive, you better not use FedEx. But their promise was that they would absolutely deliver on time. So your promise could be something along the lines of a formal process. It could be along the lines of communicating with you even after the sale, or communicating with you a minimum of once a week during the process. It could be delivering the home that you want, right? I mean, there's lots of things that you can make your promise to them.
Yeah, you're never going to miss a timeline. I'm going to help do whatever I can to make you have a less anxiety throughout this process. Right.
Yep, absolutely. So you got to create your USP for yourself. And hopefully you guys took some notes to figure out what some key value pieces could be for you. And those are things that you need to speak to on those appointments. All right. If you guys aren't familiar with Renee and I'm going to share a couple of things with you that we provide. One of them is I'm a certified trainer for the 12-week year system. Now this is, if you're not familiar with the 12-week year, it's a New York Times best-selling book. I'm lucky to be one of 50 individuals that is allowed to coach this nationwide. And every 12 weeks, I have a different group that I walk through the process of achieving more in 12 weeks than most people accomplish in 12 months. And so our next one is getting ready to start on May 6th. And so I'm taking signups for that now. The group sizes are about 8 to 15 people. They don't even have to be real estate professionals, and your goals during the 12 weeks don't even have to be business goals. Although a lot of times we have business goals for sure, but we have weight loss goals. We have people that have wanted to start podcasts, write books, learn a language, learn how to play an instrument. all of these things have been things that we've helped people do in just 12 weeks. So if you're interested, you see our emails down there below. Amanda is our assistant. Renee's my assistant with Turn That Out Coaching. You can email her or myself. Or if you're interested in signing up, it's only $3.99 for the entire 12 weeks. And it starts by getting a one-on-one coaching session with me for 90 minutes, where I'm going to help you identify some goals to set for yourself for the 12 weeks. And then I'm going to help you pick the tactics to achieve those. And maybe one of those goals is to create a formal buyer process for you by the end of the 12 weeks. And that's something that we can help you create. So it's $3.99 for the entire 12 weeks, one-time cost. You get a copy of the book, and you get access to the Achieve software, which helps you track the stuff as time goes by. And then it should be obvious, but we also do one-to-one coaching. We have multiple of our coaching clients on here right now, but we coach agents and broker owners across the country. Renee and I have traveled and trained across the country and spoken at different keynote events across the country. And if you want a free coaching session, a free consultation with us, please reach out to us. It's no obligation. We are not high pressure people. We don't have contracts. We are month to month. We want to provide the value to you. Otherwise, you shouldn't be in coaching, right? We shouldn't be keeping you as a client if we're not providing enough value. And then the last thing I wanted to just share is, if you aren't listening to our podcast, Renee and I have a podcast. It's been going for about 4 years now. We have listeners in, I think, over almost 60 countries now. It's crazy how big it's gone, but we have almost every topic you can imagine that we've done. In fact, we're getting ready to have Lori Edwards on our show. So you'll get to hear some cool things from her about being authentic. But every topic you can imagine, and we try to think of what's relevant today, like what's going on today. So for example, you can see on the screen here, 3 things you need to know regarding the NAR settlement, right? That was relevant. So we shared that. Get some listings, getting listings. This is the year of listings. So we talked about some tips on that. So feel free to listen to our podcast. It's free. Doesn't cost you anything. And with that, are there any questions that you guys have from today? Or anything else that you want to add? Nothing? Don't be shy.
We can stay on for a minute too after, in case anyone just doesn't want to ask anything in front of the group. What are you gonna say, Donna?
I have a question, and I hope it doesn't come off wrong, because I am looking for an answer. Out here, we don't price fix. And some of our new home sales will pay phenomenal, especially Lennar now, who really turned their back on us during COVID. But no, some of the new home sales, they'll pay a lot. I was just curious, not to get a total number, but I'm trying to figure out what I want to ask, because I feel like sometimes my value is the same to everyone. But if somebody's buying another property from me, or if someone has been a solid referral for me, I do want to offer them some kudos. And I was just wondering how other people felt about what they were going to ask for. Maybe not necessarily a number, but is it going to be the same one that you had before all this stuff
Is
started
anyone
happening?
considering charging
Yeah.
differently?
You know
in the
what,
future?
Donna, I'll chime in first if you don't mind. We recommend in several trainings we've done in the past, we recommend having a commission, like a rate guide for yourself. And on that, like, picture like a card. We like to say laminate the card even, but like, here's my fee. But if you are selling with me, but also buying with me, my fee is now this. If you are an investor that buys rental properties and you're going to buy at least 2 every year, my commission rate is this. So you can have different rates for different circumstances. And actually, I use that as one of my dialogues as a response to when somebody says, "Hey, Scott, would you mind discounting your commission?" I would actually say, you know what, here's my commission rate card. There are times when I discount, and here they are. Right. And I'll just show it to them. I'm very transparent about that. For me, because I'm prior military, I also gave a military discount. So I think being able to identify that, Donna, because you have lots of clients that use you multiple times. So I agree that I think it's fair that maybe you give them a little bit of a discount if that's what you want to do. Who else has a thought on that? Anybody else
Scott,
have
I like,
Yeah.
Scott, I like the card idea and the idea of even laminating it, because then you're consistent and you've thought intentionally through all those different pieces and exact things. I was a public school teacher, so I often offer a reduced amount to what I consider community servants, primarily because they're paid so poorly in our community. So having that consistent is extremely important.
Yes, I love that.
Well, and I think to that point too, right? Like, Scott mentioned he was prior in the military. That was something that was near and dear to our hearts too. So it would be, okay, for military members, we had a certain amount that we discounted. If we did that for every client, then that would make that military member less important, right? So like to your point, Lori, you could really share, hey, I value those in the public school system or community service or however you have defined that. And so then I feel better about not getting that discount if that doesn't mean me, because I know that allows you to give back within the community.
Yeah. Yep, love that. And by the way, real quick too, I know that there are agents on listing agreements and on buyer agency agreements where it talks about the commission rate that you charge. They leave it blank until they have the conversation with the client, and I completely disagree with that tactic. I think having it printed, like from the copier, right, from the printer, not handwritten in, have it printed your rate on there, and then if you decide to discount it, crossing it off and handwriting it in is a better way to go than leaving it blank, because then it seems as if we're going to have a conversation first and then I'm going to write in a number. So I'd rather show them, here's what I charge, but I'm going to give you a little discount because you're a teacher or because you're military or whatever. Yeah. Any other questions that you guys have? Well, thank you guys for attending today. I know that your time is valuable. Hopefully you found the investment today of your time valuable enough. You got a couple of nuggets from it. And please follow us on our podcast. And if you listen to our podcast already, we'd love a review. We'd love to get some more reviews on there. So thank you guys. Have a fantastic day.
Awesome.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Thank
See ya.
you.